The first one, we'll sort of gloss over this one a little bit because as we're short for time, it's not necessarily the most important one. But I was hoping we could just start with you just quickly introducing yourself and maybe briefly saying what attracted you to becoming a health professional to begin with.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Evie Strong. I was Evie Dutton. And originally I was dancer learning ballet, jazz, tap growing up as a kid from 5, and then went into the professional industry on cruise ships. And basically knowing that that wasn't going to be my forever, my be all end all for the rest of my life, given that it's a pretty, you know, lucrative sort of spot. You're going to dance for a little bit and you might get injury, or you might find yourself in a spot where you don't get hired anymore because you've passed the age of 40. I sort of need to look at something else. So ultimately, what was the best option? Well, if I was group training, I could sort of somewhat be performing. So I guess that was a little bit of a pull, was that I liked the idea of being up on a stage and was confident being a performer. So that sat pretty nicely. And then ultimately, I was trained by a personal trainer throughout my dance career to basically keep lean and strong and where I needed to be physically, and really enjoyed it and just sort of thought, this guy's really lucky. I want to do what he does. So yeah, I guess a combination of those couple of things, combined with the fact that I could study remotely. So I was able to study while I was still finishing up my cruise contracts back in 2014. So that option of being able to sort of chip away at something while I was on a sea day on the cruise ships, or, having some downtime, was really appealing. Um, and yeah, I guess it was just from a lot of great experiences of seeing. It was at the time my Zumba instructor certification that I started with, and seeing how people would leave my classes, just coming in feeling a bit average, but leaving a better person and feeling better for it on their way out. So yeah, I guess it's ultimately the opportunity to move into a new space that I could see longevity in, being able to perform and sort of have a little bit of fun with working with people, but ultimately being able to help people was sort of what made me come here and stay here. So.
In your opinion, what are the key advantages and disadvantages of being a new practitioner entering the industry?
Well, I think new trainers at the moment are really lucky because there's a lot of opportunity to niche out even from the get-go, in ways that there wasn't perhaps from the start. There's so many ways you can choose to sort of bolt on different certifications and qualifications to your belt as such. So I think that's really exciting. A trainer doesn't have to just go one place or just train in a room in a lecture theatre or any kind of setting that doesn't suit them. They can kind of adjust that to their needs and learning styles. But ultimately, once they become trained, I think it's a really great place to be because people are much more aware of their health, mental well-being. They're also in a position where they know what a personal trainer is now. Even when I started back in 2016, I felt like people were still coming into that. What is a trainer relationship like? What can I expect from a trainer? How does a session look? But nowadays, I think our sort of Gen Zs and whatnot coming through are really aware, and it's just part of the furniture. It's not really necessarily a luxury item anymore. And I think people are willing to spend more on their fitness than they have in the past. But I think with that, the disadvantages are that, of course, we're going through a recession at the moment. So naturally, those that do see it as a luxury item or a sort of as and when needed, as opposed to a day-to-day thing, might find it, or the trainers might find it a bit trickier to get their clients that they once might have more easily. So yeah, I guess there's always going to be advantages and disadvantages of any spot to sit within a career at all. But like I think just that exposure of our industry out in the real world now is a real advantage for these young ones coming in.
And just
When you
one question
say that,
quickly.
uh,
On that, would you say as a new practitioner you would need to find a niche quickly? From your experience as a dancer, would you say that that has been helpful to getting more clients or getting
Yeah,
your name out
absolutely.
there?
I think it's important to have a bit of direction in where you want to head, but not be closed off either. I've always got this mindset of, you've got to sort of see where things take you because you never know what you might enjoy that you never anticipated you would. Personally, I'm working, as I said, in the space of dance and fitness, particularly with dancers in Pilates and strength conditioning, but also in the space of seniors classes, which if I'd thought about it when I was in my mid-20s, sort of coming into this career, I probably wouldn't have assumed that it would be something I would love as much as I do, or be as a great a market as it is for me. So, financially. So that's sort of something that I've come to learn from going outside of my niche. So certainly promoting the fact that there's got to be a little bit of concentration or focus, I guess, on where you want to head, but not being closed off. You don't want to be that trainer that decides on week one that they want to train all the soccer players in the world. They want to be the soccer trainer, closed off to any middle-aged woman that's not in the market in their ideal niche. And ultimately, those are the people who are going to start your career off and pay your bills and allow you to grow and to mature into that trainer that you might identify with later on in your career. I just think you've got to take it all as you can get it to begin, and allow yourself to get that practice. Your best session is the last session you've done, right? You've got to keep getting those sessions under your belt to be able to get the experience and that training of how you want to be as the best trainer you can be, and then start to work into that niche spot once you've had the experience and time under your belt.
You mentioned before that people are more willing to spend now. Do you think that's just because there's sort of a big trend towards, especially at the moment, people
Yeah.
being really healthy, and maybe social media is sort of like, you see this big rise in like run clubs and healthy eating and
Yep.
all this sort of stuff at the moment. Do you have any idea what has brought that on? Do you just think it's just a trend towards everyone being healthier?
Yeah, I think COVID has a lot to answer for in a good way. I think people
Mm,
realized that they felt really good when they had the time to get out and be outside and move their bodies. I think they also discovered that being stuck inside could also give them a little insight as to what was really going on in their mind. And actually, when they started moving, those mindsets and health wise, their mental health was a lot better. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for how COVID helped us out and sort of brought our perhaps less engaged members of the industry, or engaged not at all, the people that were sitting on the couches and then saw a Les Mills workout appear on their screen, or they decided to pop something on YouTube and get moving. We sort of had a lot of people introduced to exercise just simply because they had the time. But I think, like I say, I think that new generation coming on board, there's some interesting, I've heard from parents of children in that generation, sort of that teenage space now, they don't particularly like the idea of going out drinking, or, they're really particular about what they eat and how they want to move their bodies. I'm speaking generally, but I think there's just a real mindset now around what can I do to be healthy, and perhaps do it different to what my parents did or my grandparents did. I also think from what I see in the seniors space now, they're coming to be more aware of things that their parents never taught them. They didn't necessarily sit down and know that that piece of chicken on their plate was protein, and they need a little bit of that to help their muscles. That all of that is news to them. I feel like I'm so interesting to them when I speak of those sorts of things, because it just wasn't in their learnings as a child growing up. It was sort of meat and two veg. So I think a lot about nutrition is becoming a little bit more out there as well, in terms of being on the lips of people that perhaps never had in their upbringing. So perhaps those grandparents are encouraging of their young ones to keep moving and keep active, and introduce good nutrition habits and things like that as well. So it's sort of coming from the top, but I think they've got that real intrinsic, the young ones have got that real intrinsic sort of need to keep fit and healthy, because they want to be
yeah.
in a different space to their parents and grandparents.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of that sort of nutrition stuff going on social media, but I suppose
Yeah. Oh,
the
exactly.
the
100%.
issue is that there's a lot of noise out there as well, and a lot of people's
Yeah.
talking on different things who aren't
Oh,
necessarily
exactly.
experts, and there's potentially a trouble or a danger that comes in there as well. But
Yeah, yeah, and I think
it
that's where
is
the
good to
trainers are in a
see.
good spot to try and like
Yeah,
reveal the real facts of that, and not let people get too
exactly.
waylaid. Interesting you bring up that point, because I haven't even mentioned social media yet, and of course that's a massive part of it. But if I'm honest, I do try and keep quite out of that, and sort of not let that influence the trainer I like to be. People
Hmm.
always go about the transformation photos or the big challenges or the whatever they want to do, but I personally just don't believe in any of it. I think you've really got to make sure it's a lifestyle, it's a day to day. It's not about what you looked like in a photo 6 months ago. Okay, those are the changes that are going to happen naturally, but it's all about actually creating that lifestyle of moving every day. And not
Hmm.
necessarily about what you've managed to achieve in 6 weeks and then you stop and that's the end of that. So yeah, interesting. Lots of different ways people put it, but I think the young ones are seeing a lot. You're right, and it's just trying to, as a trainer, make sure that information they're feeding themselves is healthy and helping them. So
Yeah, I mean that sort of leads into the next question quite nicely, because obviously a big way that sort of trainers and health professionals are getting seen and getting clients at the moment is through social media. But What are the key skills and strategies that a practitioner can learn to increase their income or to increase their visibility in the profession?
Yeah, I think the big thing with that is being versatile. I think you've just got to see that diversification is really going to help. And it's really, really cool to think, yep, I'm going to be a personal trainer and that's all I'm going to do and I'm going to hone in on that. And I think, many do have luck and success in that. But ultimately, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't own my own home or have any kind of excitement about my future if I wasn't able to see the benefit of having lots of skills to my bow. So coming into it, I was focusing, I guess, just purely to keep things simple on my PT, but I sort of already had a little bit of introduction to group fit through Zumba. But pretty quickly, as soon as I got into the personal training world within Les Mills, I saw that I really needed to start to add in the likes of a group fit class to sort of up my ante and sort of allow for more income and more exposure of what I was doing. Naturally, it's all very well being a trainer on a floor, especially in a big gym. You've got the advantage of having a whole lot of people basically as an audience of your sessions. If you're training a man down on the floor in front of the treadmills, you've got perhaps 20 people behind you or more that might just be watching, thinking, "Oh, I really like how that person does that. That work with their client. I want to work with them too." But if you're able to get in front of a room, especially in the likes of a big club, where you might have 50 plus people in a group fit space, you're essentially advertising yourself once again. It might be, like I say, 2 to 3 times a week, and that might not be a huge amount of planning. You might be able to rinse and repeat somewhat, or have some of your exercise planning done in an easier, quicker way than what your personal training clients might need. So I guess it's just diversifying for your own interests, to keep things interesting for yourself, to learn more and to scale out. But naturally, it then might evolve into things like presenting or educating. That's something I've got involved in sort of the last 5 or so years. And I guess that then propels you as a person, as a professional, up into a different space of, expert leadership, those sorts of things where you might not sit if you just only train patients, clients day to day. So again, it just sort of needs to flow where your natural, authentic interests are. I don't think it's worth going out on a limb just for the sake of it. But if you particularly, like myself, like dance fitness, or you particularly like combat, or you like something else, and you tend to see your clients enjoying it within the solo sessions or personal training you're doing, what's to say if you went to a big hall, community hall, or started looking at a program that's offered within your big box gym chain, whatever it might be, that you could go and train in that specific area and start to take group fit as well. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's the PT, it's the group fit, it's the presenting, it's the educating, and basically taking the opportunity to get involved in anything that's asked of you. It might be that there's someone looking for an online trainer, and you sort of don't typically like working outside of your space, or you're not sure how that's going to go. Well, give it a go. There's no harm in trying, and not to mention you could find that that's actually your little niche. It might be exactly what you've been after. So yeah, not being afraid to sort of go out of the norm and try some new things and adding them to your services and offerings.
But you don't necessarily see social media as a necessity for trainers at the moment.
I wouldn't say that. I think certainly having skills like being able to market yourself and advertise are fantastic. But I've seen
Mm,
many a trainer go without. I don't think you have to be online to be able to have a successful business.
mm,
I think I know of trainers in my space. I'm in my 30s, my mid 30s, or early to mid 30s. But I know trainers in their 40s and 50s that don't have that space. They don't actually have an audience in that space. Most of them might have a Facebook page that they now and again have a look at, but there's certainly not on Instagram, and you can certainly build a
mm.
business without Instagram. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's definitely a whole lot of youngins, and if that's your particular target market, that's where you need to be. So certainly getting those
Mm.
skills in that space to really engage that market, that's where you're gonna spend your time. But for me, I'd be wasting my time spending time on Instagram to get my seniors on board, right? So it's, for
Yeah,
me, about really investing in my relationships with these people, because if I'm kind to them and they really enjoy their class and they get a lot of benefit out of their classes with me, then they're going to go and tell their friends, and those conversations are your best advertising over any
yeah,
video,
word of mouth, right? Yeah,
right? So again,
yeah.
depends on your market, and I'm speaking only from my experience, but yeah, I certainly have come to learn a lot about what seems to work and what doesn't, especially within Facebook, because that's been around for me and my business a little bit longer. But I guess it's freeing for me to think that it doesn't happen only because of that. You don't necessarily have to be the world's best marketer or reel maker to be able to get a successful business and training. It's how you're training.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you brought up, and that people as trainers should really understand and listen to, is to really, and it's the same in any business, right? But to really understand your target market there, right?
Yeah,
Because as you said, you've got that. If you're targeting an older target market who, like, you could spend 10 hours a day on Instagram, but if your market's not there, then what's the point, right? And
exactly.
the same
Yeah,
thing for, like, even if you are doing social media, I mean, each different platform, there's so many different platforms these days, and each
yeah,
one pretty much has a different market that it's
exactly.
targeting as well. So
Yeah.
understanding that and picking the platform that suits you,
Yeah.
or not picking any of them, and going for a more traditional approach to marketing, or
Yeah,
to
and
client
exactly that. Like
acquisition.
traditional approaches, like your networking groups, marketing to your networking group could be your business wrapped up. Basically, I was part of BNI for many years. Some of the more informal kind of coffee groups and things in the mornings to get networking with other professionals, young professionals groups, those sorts of things. Especially considering business owners could be in that niche market of or have that disposable income available to them that could be a lot more. I guess, successful for you as a client, because ultimately they're able to commit to it. It's all very well having younger clients that are really keen on what they're doing to maintain their fitness, but they might then be a student and studying, and that's no longer an option for them. So you're losing out, and sort of that attrition is just really speeding up. So to be able to gain those long-term clients that really trust and confide in you, and you can build that relationship with over, I've got patients, clients I've had for 8 years, in my whole career so far. So those sorts of people don't necessarily hang out in your Instagram feed, or in your Instagram followers list, but they might be in a networking group that they heard you speak on a weekly basis and just loved to become, your relationship and the way you presented yourself, and your relationship that you build because of that is stronger than what you might have from, a random online. So don't be
Mm,
afraid to look closer. I think you get quite bombarded by the idea that there's so many people available and at your fingertips when you're online. But who are you to the people right in front of you that actually are going to turn up at your gym every week, 3 times a week for half an hour or whatever it might be? So, yeah, just looking outside the box a bit.
absolutely. Last one we've got here, unless Dan's got anything else he wants to add in. Looking back, what would you do differently or change in your career? Or do you think that all the lessons you sort of learned
Mm.
along the way has really sort of formulated the path forward?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe on top of that, is there anything that you wish that you had learned earlier that would have helped you along your way?
Yeah, exactly what you mentioned of I don't have regrets. I think everything happens for a reason, and all the hard
Hmm.
stuff was lessons learned. I certainly had many of those, and I think you've got to do that to really feel the authenticity of the experience and know what you're doing is driving you towards what you're feeling and experiencing is driving you towards the next success, right? So I wouldn't say there's anything I would do differently. I guess what I would like to think is that if I went back and did it again, I could avoid a couple of burnouts.
Hmm.
I think the big thing with a new trainer is, especially a passionate one, is that you go in all go and you give everything. I certainly, like, I've just got married in my 30s, so I certainly put my social life, my personal life on hold for a long, long time. And that I wouldn't again regret that at all. It's all happened and fallen into place at the right time. But personally, I think
Hmm.
you can sort of disadvantage and put yourself behind or back a little bit in your priority list, because you're looking after people, and ultimately that's why you're there, right? You've got that intrinsic will to help people, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a tricky spot to sit because you feel so responsible for so much about who they are, not just what they're doing in the gym. Their success, their happiness, you start to feel responsible for. So I guess it's just starting to feel a bit of balance, and learn how to, from the get-go, decide what am I going to do to form some boundaries. Am I going to decide that if I get home at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, that's when my phone's off. Obviously, people are going to be messaging if they're ill, or, it might be about the next day, and you might acknowledge those messages. But ultimately, once you get home, you've had your dinner, you switch off. Not perhaps do the midnights and the 4 o'clock starts like I did for some time. It's
Yeah.
it's all very well being busy, you know what I mean, and just sort of always feeling like that little bit more time that you spend online putting up that next post, or creating content, or filming this, filming that, having to be all of the things is a good idea. But I think there's certainly, from a place I sit now where I'm actually working smarter, not harder, as that cliche goes, of actually just
Yeah.
sitting down, doing content for a couple of hour slot, put it away for a month, don't touch it again, because you've done all your scheduling, you're good to go. Recycling content that worked well, it hasn't been out there for a wee while, being kind to yourself by not just feeling like you have to keep reinventing the wheel. But then also suggesting that, when I'm offering a patient client a session time, I've got 3 options, here they are, not I'm available for you whenever you like, just sort of being that be all end all, I'll do anything for you. Just having those boundaries in place so that they feel like you're mutual in your relationship. A really clever trainer who I learned a quick tip from just very early on, which has stuck with me, was that he said, I offer those 3 session options for timing. I sit down in my consult and I say, this is for us to feel it out and see how we feel about our relationship and how that could go as, trainer client, as opposed to I want to be your trainer every time, and feeling like if that relationship or that connection just isn't quite right or isn't going to serve either of you, that you still have to take the client anyway. So yeah, I guess his promotion of the fact that you just need to make sure that relationship clicks on both sides for the longevity of your connection with them, as opposed to just I know I need another client in the bank, or that person's going to sit in that slot that I really want them to. If it doesn't serve you, probably better to spend that hour actually doing some book work or something else. So not being afraid to form those boundaries would be a certainly be a big rule or tip from my side, is to put those in place from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your marriage, Abby.
A couple of years ago now, but
that's
yeah.
very exciting.
That
Oh,
was
it's all right.
hard,
Okay,
wasn't it?
nice. But I mean, going back, like, is there anything, like, I suppose, less glamorous that you would maybe recommend personal trainers that start to slowly learn as well? Like anything, like things like taxes and all that sort of stuff,
Oh,
or is
100%.
that sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah, you're wearing all the hats,
yeah?
aren't you? I've actually just done some of my tech stuff today, and it's taken ages. And I don't consider myself to be super simple about that, but I also just find
Mm,
all that stuff, they don't teach you that in training. I think that's the biggest
yeah.
missing piece with regards to our training tertiary level sort of work or qualifications now, is that there's a big emphasis heading our way on that, which is awesome, within the qualifications authority side of things. But ultimately it's how you train in the gym, and sort of who you become and how you do a bicep curl, as opposed to how to sort out your accounting, and even the marketing side of it. I think a lot of people are doing that pretty blind as well. So just doing those short mini courses, or jumping online and doing a little bit of a bit of learning, some lessons of how to work all that, or just paying your accountant, sitting down with your accountant and saying, hey, look, I just really want to get a concentrated bit of time so I can spend this money now and not have to worry later. I know there's not always the means to start with, but there's plenty of really great, the likes of Henry. I haven't used it myself. I'm a zero girl from the start, but I know that Henry is really helpful because it sort of does it as you go, makes that second tricky year of business a whole lot easier, that you've got everything set up. But I think just making sure you do simple things, like I always had like um, a business account, but also a tax account. So every week from the start, when I was sort of figuring out what my earnings were, I'd take 30% out and pop it straight in. End of each week, I do something a little bit different now, but ultimately it's that knowledge of, okay, if I've earned this much, I actually don't get this much, I've got to put that away. Don't see it as the money that you're earning, pop it away so that it's just out of sight, out of mind. And then when that tax bill comes and Mr. Accountant's after you, you're not in a fright. So all of those little
Yeah.
skills, think of all the hats you wear, whether it's, that you're cleaning, you're accounting, you're doing some content or social media marketing sort of work, obviously your training and planning, things like your email, how you're sending out your emails and how all that you want that to look. Obviously, it all takes time, but just writing down each of those sorts of areas and going, what am I missing my knowledge of? What's scaring me? What's worrying me about all of this? And just doing some small step work to get there. Like I say, jumping on YouTube is great. If you can spend the money and investing on some real help for yourself to get that under your belt straight away, because there's no use coming to the big bills and deciding then that you probably should do something about figuring out how to do it. So yeah, there's a lot to take on board, and those first 2 years especially are extremely busy and extremely challenging. But I think that's when, if you're not getting to that second year feeling like this is for you, and unfortunately it is a sort of quick dropout rate that we are seeing, but I think ultimately you're not going to be able to really give this this career a really good go or maintain your passion for it if there's those struggles that consistently you come up against. So yeah, spending that time at the beginning so that it does just lays down a path for you, paves the way for you to have a more effective running business, and actually a business that you can enjoy and get some peace from as well, is the big
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, that you mentioned the quick dropout rates, and I mean that's really a big reason behind why we're doing these interviews, is to get a lot, pretty much everything you just said, and that just there, that knowledge out to people that typically they wouldn't otherwise know, so that we can try help people to not sort of get halfway through and realize, oh shit, this is too much. This isn't what I signed up for.
exactly.
So
And I
yeah,
think that could be helped by, the likes of the trainers at the qualifications, different tertiary level institutes that are training our trainers. A lot of the time I feel they are people who can speak, they've walked the talk, they're people who can speak from experience. But again, if the class is about exercise prescription, then yeah, you probably won't learn how to do your taxes. So it's just making sure that those training institutes have all of the bolt-on bits that are needed for a business to run. But yeah, just realizing from the start that just being a great trainer and even being an awesome human, having a really cool way of connecting with people isn't just it. There is a lot more to it. You've got to make sure that you're passionate about being a business owner as well, and you're willing to spend the late nights and with boundaries in place, but spend that time becoming a bit of an expert on how to run a business. And so many people around you, family, friends and whatnot, parents, might have experience in a different business model or a different type of industry, but ultimately that info is all the same. So just pulling in any bit of information that you can to upskill on those areas outside of training, which you're the expert on, of course. I honestly reckon if I consider myself as a trainer, I'm not the best trainer in the world, but I care so deeply about people. And I think that's the number one. They need to see that you care. No one knows how much what's that quote? I always get it wrong. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you can get that out to them, that you're there for them, you want their success to be as quick as possible and maintained for as long as possible, that's the number one. But then again, if you can't actually get to them because you can't put petrol in your car, all of those things come into that care factor, right? So it might be seen as, I don't want to be a mathematician or a sort of tax person, but you've got to sort it out to be able to make sure you can give the goods and all that great exercise prescription that you've learned so much about in place, can have that in place and able to help that person up. So
fantastic. Dan, did you have any other questions there?
No, that was
No.
perfect. Yeah.
Thank
So those answers were
Thank you very
awesome.
much, Abby. That was absolutely fantastic.
No worries, guys.
I hope we haven't taken up too much of your time.
No, not at all. Anytime. That's all cool. Keep in touch and let me know how you're getting on, and all the best with everything. It's very exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. That's been fantastic, and I think that's really gonna help a lot of people. And it was exactly what we're after from these interviews. So thank you very much.
Cool. Pleasure, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers,
yeah, you
Abby.
too. Best of luck with everything.
Keep in touch.
Will do. See ya.
See you later.
Awesome. See ya.